dear friends in Christ. Today we join the Universal Church in celebrating this great feast of the dedication of the Lateran Basilica in Rome. First constructed in the 4th century, the most holy church of the Lateran, the mother and head of all the churches of the city and the world, as the words etched into the stone above the main doors of the basilica proclaim in Latin. A cathedral made of concrete, Roman brick, red granite, Carrara marble, and gilded bronze. It is fitting, given how we understand who we are as church, that this is the building we point to out of the tens, if not hundreds of thousands of Catholic churches and chapels, basilicas and cathedrals standing somewhere on planet Earth. We point to that church and say, she's the one. Know her, and you will know who we are. That poor basilica. It was sacked and pillaged by the hordes of invading Vandals in the 5th century. Its nave collapsed in an earthquake in the 9th century. It was left to decay for decades upon decades during the Middle Ages. 2 separate fires in the 14th century devastated the basilica. And in 1993, the Italian mafia detonated a bomb that damaged the rear portico of the basilica. Every time, though, the Lateran Basilica was repaired, rebuilt, and renewed. Directly across from the basilica and facing it is a bronze statue of the poor St. Francis of Assisi, put there in 1927 to commemorate the 700th anniversary of St. Francis's death. You might recall that in 1209, Francis made the 100-mile pilgrimage from his home in Assisi to Rome so that he could meet Innocent III, the Pope, whose chair sat majestically in the Lateran Basilica then, as it does now. So Francis was seeking approval for his new order of poor brothers, inspired by a vision he had while in the ruined chapel of San Damiano. While praying before the crucifix, Francis heard the voice of Jesus saying, "Francis, go repair my house, which, as you see, is falling completely into ruin." "I do so willingly," he responded. Francis initially took the Lord literally, and with whatever building skills he had, he began to repair that church. Soon, of course, he realized that the Lord was calling him to repair, rebuild, and renew the Catholic community, because so many within that community, particularly its leaders, had so clearly lost their way, burdened as they were by scandal, prone to excesses of every kind, tempted by the coin of power and wealth. So he met the Pope in Rome, and there in the Lateran Palace adjacent to the Basilica, Innocent gave his blessing. And now, directly across the street from that beautiful basilica stands a statue of poor Francis, his arms extended outward, as if both embracing and blessing the Catholic Church he loved, and with it, all of creation, calling the church, its leaders, and all the faithful to be faithful once again to the gospel, and so repair, rebuild, and renew not only the church, but the world. The gospel passage from the Gospel of John chosen for this feast has us standing before another sacred place, the temple in Jerusalem, where we see Jesus taking matters into his own hands. By turning over the money changers' tables, he was telling the leaders of his own people and his own religious family, "You can do better, and I'll show you how." And so, show us Jesus did. He climbed the hill of crucifixion carrying the cross of shame and was nailed to it. Show us he did. He died on that cross that Good Friday and was buried. And with him was buried forever the lasting burden of human sin. And when on the 3rd day Jesus was raised from the dead, he opened the gates of paradise so that we might embrace even as we live now on our little patch of planet Earth, we might embrace an eternal love that is stronger than death. The coin of redemption, won for us by Jesus, was forged in the fires of mercy and compassion that we are now asked to stoke in the deepest warrens of our hearts. How will we then repair, rebuild, and renew our church and our world? In creating spaces and places like here, where everyone is welcome. And it is clear in the Gospels that Jesus means everyone. Places like here, where everyone belongs, where no one, especially the least among us, is ever forgotten or left behind. We repair, rebuild, and renew the church that we love every moment of every day, because this is who we are at our best. We never grow weary of doing better. We are gathered here in this space, this humble church named after our Holy Cross brother, St. Andre Bessette, whose primary ministry in Holy Cross was to open the doors to visitors at our school in Montreal. Before this place became a sacred space, our home, it was a home to hundreds over the years, perhaps thousands, for it was an old apartment building, much like the Helen Swindell apartments right next door to us, and the dozen or more of the other residential hotels and apartment buildings in Old Town. Home to many of the poor folk who live in our neighborhood. I think about my neighbors often, and it troubles me deeply to think that any number of them walk around wondering if they matter at all. They remind me that I can always do better. I can always be better. I look out now, and I can see the place there in the back pew, where there's a simple laminated piece of paper taped to the back of that pew, and see an old friend's name on it, a parishioner here who died a number of years ago, who suffered deeply in his life, who wondered often if it mattered, if God loved him. Peter Curtin sat in that very spot every day for Mass. A previous pastor put that sign there because Peter would become quite agitated if he found someone else, like Bill right now, sitting in his spot. I'm glad that that sign is still there. He is like our own St. Francis, embracing and blessing us and reminding us that we can always do better. In a short while, having been nourished at the table of Eucharist and having had our hearts set on fire with love beyond all telling, we will, after our conversation after Mass upstairs on the second floor, we'll go back into our world that longs to believe it is possible to do better, to be better. And we will do our part here to help repair, rebuild, and renew that broken but oh so beautiful path of the world that we call home. For we read toward the beginning of the dogmatic constitution on the church, Lumen Gentium, the church encompasses with love all who are afflicted with human suffering, and in the poor and afflicted sees the image of its poor and suffering founder. It does all it can to relieve their need, and in them it strives to serve Christ.